Now does it think you're the host?
All right, recording in progress. We have success. Welcome to episode number 3. And today we have a special guest. Emily Harrison is the founder of the Akashic Records Academy. So, I, like most people, have heard the term Akashic Records these days. It's pretty much all over the place.
It's a trend out there. I actually think, Mike, that it is the number one searched topic when it comes to metaphysics right now. So you're right. A whole bunch of people are figuring out what the Akashic records are, wanting to know how to use them. They're definitely illuminating in our field right now for a reason.
What got you into this field?
Well, since being a kid, I've always been interested in energetic things from ghosts to I love to play the Ouija board with my cousins. Now, I grew up small town Missouri where we were in the Bible Belt, Mike, and my mama was a Sunday school teacher. So I was not only immersed in the church through her affiliation, which I honestly loved. I loved being in that frequency, especially when they were singing and praying. I just felt the spirit moving within me. But I was also very curious and a bit of a rebel. I'm a Gemini, so I also dabbled with the spiritual things
Me
that we were
too.
told not to play with as a kid, right? Yeah. So I had always had part of me that was interested in this, but where it really became alive in my field was after I left Missouri. So I grew up small town Missouri, went to college at Mizzou, was 19 years old, and feeling very much just like not inspired by life. I freaking hated getting out of bed every morning, going to class. It wasn't living up to my expectations of an exciting life. And I remember driving home from campus one day. I lived in an apartment off campus, and when we drive, we use different brain waves. There are different things going on, right? I went into this Zen meditation state where I had this download at 16 where I felt this knowingness like, Emily, your life is yours. If you don't like it, do something else. And so I asked my 19-year-old self, all right, well, what would that look like? And my 19-year-old self answered, go to Hollywood, which sounded amazing. It sounded way more fun than what I was doing in Missouri. So I pulled the plug on life in Missouri and I went to Hollywood, Los Angeles, and I wanted to start acting. Right, but I had never acted before. Maybe I'd done a couple school plays here and there, written, some plays for my puppets, my sock puppets when I was a kid, but never really considered myself a thespian. So I was learning a lot, starting from scratch and playing in the big leagues, I might say. What I noticed really quickly, Mike, was that I sucked and that I needed some training. So not only did I start going to acting class and really learning about the craft of acting, but I also noticed that when I would get auditions and my agent would send me into these rooms where I had big opportunities, I was really good in my head. Like she would send me the audition script and I would practice in my head, my lines. I'm like, dang, that sounds really good. And then I would get in there and I would suck. Like it wasn't coming out of my mouth the same. I was nervous. So in addition to learning the craft of acting, I had to learn how to have a command over my own subtle energy body. So
Mhm.
meditation, tai chi, qigong, yoga, those were the things that really helped me to start getting a command over my subtle energy body, especially meditation. And I learned about the law of attraction. I started getting acting jobs right and left, Mike. So the more I would meditate, it started to sink in my mind. The more I'm meditating, the more acting jobs I'm getting. So the more I would meditate. And anybody who's taken on a devotion to meditation, we know that our consciousness begins to expand so rapidly. And I began to become curious about everything metaphysical, everything in the quantum world. I was a young mom as well, so my kids would go off to school, and I would be listening to any metaphysical podcasts I could get my hands on. And I loved everything I was learning. And I also noticed in the back of my head there was a voice saying, "You can do this too. You can do this too." So I got to the point in my career where I was starting to get a lot more acting roles. However, I wasn't truly living up to my own expectations. I mean, the more roles I was getting, the more I was missing as well. I mean, it's a numbers game, right? And I was getting turned down for career making roles like Fantastic Four and the Avengers and Pearl Harbor. And on the outside, it looked like my career, my stars rise I've got a young family. On the inside, I felt depressed. I felt not worthy. I felt like I wasn't finding my place to fit in, like I wanted more for my life. And I was really searching. I was depressed. And the only time I really truly felt alive was when I was meditating or studying. I just came back to life, right? And I wanted to help other people with this too, but had no idea what that looked like because my life, I had pulled the plug on everything I knew, my life in Missouri, put all my eggs in this one basket of becoming an actress, and it didn't feel like I could shift or move out of that. Right. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate. And what's happening on the planet right now, with this evolution of light and connecting into our soul purpose, that shifts how we show up and serve the planet. And there are a lot of people that are searching for. It's one of the reasons that I love being on this podcast with you, Mike, because there's an invitation to step up and to find new identity, and that's scary, right? And that was scary for me in those moments. So I'm outside gardening one day, and my neighbor comes limping by. I realize I haven't seen this neighbor for about 6 months or so. And I say to him, Daniel, what happened to you? You're limping. And he said, I know, I fell and shattered my ankle. It's not healing very well. And I said, well, do you want to come over for some energy healing? And this came out of my mouth before I even thought about what I was saying, Mike. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, what the did I just say? Like, I'm an actress. I am not an energy healer. I don't even know what to do. Like, I hope he says no. And he goes, sure, let me go put my dog away. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And then I get this idea, like, just act like an energy healer. So I'm like, okay, I can wing it. I can improv, right? I know how to do that. And so I've got this tuning fork that I've had for a really long time. And I get my tuning fork out and I set him down and I put these big headphones, these big Sony headphones on him. And he's hooked up to an iPad, listening to some solfeggio scale I found on YouTube. And I'm waving this tuning fork around his foot because we're sitting outside in my front yard. And I'm thinking, if my husband comes home right now, I'm going to have some explaining to do. And then all of a sudden, my friend, his name is Daniel, Daniel's father, who had passed, came into my awareness. It was like all of a sudden I just felt the presence of his dad there. And I've seen enough episodes of Long Island Medium. I know I'm supposed to talk to him. So I start this telepathic conversation. I'm a rookie, though, mind you. And I ask him, okay, what's your name? And what I get back in my imagination, I see like these big bubble letters, Bob, 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 flashing in my mind, but not Bob. They crossed it out. But a J name, short like Bob. I'm like, Bob, not Bob. Bob. Okay, I'm not sure if this is working. Bob, not Bob. Trying to figure it out, right? And then Bob, not Bob, steps forward. He's like very valiant. And he says, I saved my son. And I'm like, all right, Bob, not Bob, you did a terrible job because his ankle shattered and he's not healing, but okay, guy, you saved him. And then I see an image in my mind of two hands coming together. Next thing I know, the meditation's over. My friend Daniel's taking the headphones off. I'm like, do you feel better? And he goes, yeah, I think I do. I said, great, bye. And I shoot him off home. And I went inside and I'm washing my hands, and Bob, not Bob, is there. He won't leave me alone. He's like, please reach out to my son and let him know I was there. So I call my friend back up and I'm like, all right, I'm an actress. I'm not a medium. And I do feel like your dad came through and has some messages for you. If you're open to them, I'll share with you what I was getting. I don't know if I'm right, but I'll share. And he goes, well, sure. So he came back over and I make us coffee and we sit down on the porch and I said, all right, what was your dad's name? And he said, my dad's name was Alan. And I'm like, oh crap, I got that wrong. Because I was getting Bob, 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 not Bob, but a J name, short like Bob. And he goes, Emily, my dad's name was Alan J. Jay. He went by his middle name. And so we were both kind of like, oh, okay. And then I said, well, he very valiantly said that he saved you. I told him he did a terrible job, but he insisted. And Daniel said, well, this is what had happened. I had been experiencing vertigo for a couple months, but I was doing better. I felt better. I wanted to go out shopping for my girlfriend. So I was at this jewelry store in Malibu, second story of a strip mall, and I started to feel the vertigo come back on, and I didn't want to pass out there inside the jewelry store. So I stepped outside. I did pass out outside, but where the paramedics found me, they said 2 more inches and you would have fallen down 2 flights of concrete stairs.
Whoa.
So we realized, oh, his dad really did save him. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I shared with him that last image of, yeah, of the two hands coming together. And he started to cry. And he told me, Emily, my dad and I were estranged for 30 years. However, we reconciled before he died, and I was holding his hand when he died.
Wow.
I know, right? And so at that point, I'm crying too. That's when my life shifted, Mike. I realized at that point, like, the healing that we both experienced of tapping into greater potential and feeling connection, not separation, it changed everything within me in that moment. And I knew that there was no story that I could tell in Hollywood, no story that I could be a part of that was as powerful or as inspiring as the story of human potential. And I wanted to get a sign on my door or something, some kind of a certification so I could help other people recognize this, right? And I share with you, I was interested in everything from theta healing to astrology to Reiki. I felt a resonance with all of it. And so, as I was figuring out what my modality was going to be, when the Akashic Records had illuminated my field, I'm looking through this Conscious Life magazine for a class to take. I'm like, which one's it going to be? Reiki? No, yoga. Akashic Records, that's it. Because the records hold all information, past, present, all possible futures. It's recorded from a neutral perspective. This is likened to the ethereal library of the universe, the God mind, right? The book of life. This holds all of the potential data in the universe. So anything that we were interested in, whether it's mediumship or it's guidance for our life or self-healing, I would be able to access that through the space of the Akashic Records. And as I began to study the records, I realized everybody can do this. We are all programmed to be connected into this technology, and it eliminates the middleman. So, like I shared with you, the communication in my mind when I was asking for the name of Jay came in Bob, Bob, Bob. Why did it come in as Bob? Well, because I have a reference point to the name Bob. It's easy for them to use that in my mind to communicate with me because I have a reference point there. I have a perspective that's connected to that name. That was my father in law's name. Our guide, the Akashic Records, innate intelligence speaks to us through our own perspective. So when each one of us take that responsibility for the communication and interpreting those messages, we don't leave it up to somebody else to get it wrong or possibly interpret the message in a way that causes us to miss it, because that can happen so many times too. So that really became my mission, Mike, was to teach people how to do this for themselves.
How is the Akashic Records accessing that Alexandria library or whatever in the sky? How is that similar to remote viewing? Is it the same thing or is it different but related? Or because you hear remote viewers can access information throughout time and space in a similar fashion.
Mhm.
Is it just a different technique or is it?
Yeah, I would say when we go into the records too, yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about those, about the similarities and the differences. So, the Akashic Records is, we could look at it as a location. Okay. It's truly, it permeates all around us. We can locate this field of intelligence all around us, right? But we could look at the Akashic Records as a location. What remote viewing is shifting our consciousness because our consciousness is non-local. It is not required to stay inside of our body. So when we can pinpoint a target and move our consciousness into that target and begin to perceive the data that's there, whether it's data in our mind, data that comes in through the body, remote viewing. And when you do it through I'm not, the scientific way isn't the right terminology, but there is a technique that was developed and used by the military it's highly methodological and not what you think about just tapping in there. There are certain ways that you do it, right? That you learn how to do it. I teach this in my advanced classes on how to replicate their process. But it has to do with shifting our consciousness, moving it into a specific space in the time space continuum and collecting data from there. So, in essence, we could say that we are remote viewing the Akashic Records. That's how we're getting access to the records or getting the intelligence. I don't quite use that terminology for people. Remote viewing is pretty advanced term, which by the way, high five that you're hanging out with people and they're like are interested in this, right? But another way that I would say, or how I usually tell people about accessing the Akashic records and how that works is that it's a vibrational frequency. So this realm of data, all information, it's completely neutral. And neutral actually means unconditional love and zero judgment. Most people think of neutral as comme si, comme ça, meh, like lukewarm. No, true neutrality is unconditional love and zero judgment. So anytime we can shift our own being into a frequency match of being, in a state of unconditional love and zero judgment, we have access. Like our mind is naturally connected to the Akashic records, to the God mind. And so the questions that we ask as we're asking and having communication in our mind, we're going to be naturally connected into the Akashic records. The challenge is most people don't hold a frequency within their body, their mind, their emotions 24/7 of unconditional love and zero judgment.
So that gets into the question, if anybody can access the Akashic records, how is this not militarized and used for against people? And what are the limitations of it? Like,
Mhm.
can you pretty much figure out anything that has ever happened? Can you like solve mysteries of the past, crimes of the past? Can you find out if dinosaurs had hair? Can you find out where you lost that $20 like when you were 15 or whatever? I mean,
Yes. Like the short answer is yes, and the long answer is our why behind things is really important as we're using the Akashic records. It's not meant to be a parlor tool. It's not meant for the curious, right? It can be weaponized and it has been weaponized on this planet before, which is why it was quote physically removed from the planet. So back in the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, we had access to the Akashic records through crystalline structures and it was prevalent in the field around us. And it was compromised, I'll say, during the crisis and ultimate downfall of Atlantis and Lemuria because technology ultimately was weaponized against humanity and blew us up. Like we wiped ourselves off of the planet. And we've done it several times. So the Akashic records were physically removed from the planet so that they were accessible only through a vibrational frequency match of unconditional love and zero judgment, which is why we now go into states of meditation where we are consciously letting go of the part of us our ego is any part of us that feels separate from God. So the ego is the part of us that can feel victimized. When we feel victimized, for example, losing your $20, we feel like a victim. We're like, damn, where'd my $20 go? What the Akashic Records is going to be more valuable in helping us to realize is why I lost the $20. What was the lesson there for my soul? Because the records are here to help us see through a different perspective so that we can change our thoughts, change our vibration, change our destiny. They have to do with uh, revealing self-knowledge, right? They're a self-learning tool. So we want to use them in a high level of integrity to help understand ourselves better. And the records will help us to understand the soul lesson, the nature of why our soul chose the experiences that we did here on the planet.
so
The frequency match for getting good access though, because like you said, can you just like look at anything and tap into anything and see information? One thing that's important to recognize is that we have to have permission to tap into anyone else's records. Some things are public domain. Planet Earth, you can tap into her Akashic records as an earthling. You have a right to that public domain. The Bible, for example, you can tap into the consciousness of the Bible and understand more about that. That's public domain. But Mike, you can't tap into my records without my permission, and I can't tap into yours without your permission. However, we can get information about people we are in soul contract with through our own Akashic records by asking questions like, for example, let's say that, you and I were friends and we get in this fight, right? I can't go into your records and be like, why is Mike such an asshole about this? Right? I can go into my records though and say, what is my soul inviting me to learn about this conflict, this challenge that I'm experiencing? Like, what's here for me? And that's another stipulation on how the records work. One, the records will only give us information that we're ready to receive. So we have to ask questions, right? You can't just go into the records and expect like you sit down to your psychic and she starts giving you a psychic reading, right? She's tapping into your aura and the energy field all around you and she's giving you this data or he's giving you this data. The records don't work that way. You got to take ownership. It's self-initiation. You have to ask and invite forward the intelligence that you're ready to receive. And we also have to take full responsibility for everything that we've created. And ultimately, that's connected into the reason that souls even incarnate here to Earth School, because it's pretty challenging place to be. But one of the reasons that we incarnate here in Earth School is to experience ourselves as the God creator, Goddess creator. And we are creating every single thing that we are experiencing in our life. Every victory, every trauma, every challenge, every conflict, every opportunity, it's coming from within our own internal vibrational frequency. So taking ownership and being willing to say, I created and sickness is a tough one to take ownership of create because why would I want to create cancer in my life? Why would I want to create autoimmune disease in my life, Emily? Well, but there's a soul lesson that's inviting you into a deeper level of empowerment, right? And so that's what the records can really help us identify in our life when we know how to use them in the proper way. So that became my mission, is teaching people, hey guys, you're already connected to this realm anyway. Why don't I teach you how to use it as a tool for wisdom, guidance, and clarity, as we're all here to walk our highest potential. That's also the amazing thing about being here and alive on this planet right now is, yes, if you look at the outside world, you can see the Maya, the illusion, the falsity, the fear construct. And at the same time, we have the opportunity to experience full evolution in all of our bodies, our mental body, our emotional body, our spiritual body. Which one did I miss? Our physical bodies. We have the opportunity to live in our highest potential in all of those areas. In previous lifetimes, we'd work on one of them or a couple lessons in one of those areas. We're now in soul acceleration where we can bring all of those aspects of ourself into the highest potential. And that's what the records really help us do.
So I'm sure you've heard of a Project Looking Glass, right?
Nope.
It's
Maybe I have.
it's an
Tell me though.
alleged technology that the elites have been using all along to predict the future and every possible outcome and how to predict the future to basically control us. So I guess if you haven't heard of it, you probably don't have any opinion about how they might be weaponizing the Akashic records in some way or accessing them.
Yeah, let's
Uh,
see. Let me tap in and see that, because what it sounds like is okay. So what they're showing me right now is this. Ooh, and chills through my whole body. One reason that Earth School is so challenging is because it serves as a mirrored plane of the reverse of what's happening in the heavens. So, for example, they talk a lot about the pyramid. There's a physical pyramid there. Well, there's a lot of them. But let's talk about the Great Pyramid in Egypt, right? There's that physical pyramid there, and then there's an energetic one upside down underneath, like that reflective quality, right? So in this zone, there is that inverse reflection technology that can very easily be weaponized and used against us. It makes me think of a mission that I went on one time. So, as you know, you and I met through our mutual friend Brad Olson, who is, visionary leader on the forefront of bringing through information, conspiracy information, and inviting humans to think differently about things. Another cool cat that I run onto in doing this spiritual work over the past 10 years is Bill Holman and the Mitchell Hedges Crystal Skull. And we were together the spring equinox, March of 23 at the Serpent Mound in Ohio. when we
Cool.
got called on a mission that morning, CERN was using this some technologies had opened a portal there at the Serpent Mound, and we were being sent on a mission to go figure out like what to do to reverse this technology, right? And so Bill comes down that morning and we're all gathered around the table and he tells us about this mission and he says, "You don't have to go if you don't want to. But if you want to go, we're going." So of course all of us want to go. And then he's like, "Oh, Emily, by the way, can you open the Akashic Records and see what we're supposed to do?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, sure, Bill." And so I opened the records, and what came through was installing a cosmic mirrored technology that sends any manipulator like at a very high level and simple level, because that's really the only degree to which I can speak at what I bring through. I'm not scientifically trained. I told y'all my ass dropped out of college and I went to become an actress. Okay, so I can explain the story part of it to you. The science part, we got to get another expert cat in here to explain the science. But they did. It was very simple. It was a mirrored technology that the intention is to send energy back to source.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's what came through speaking on of the mirrored technology and how all of the pieces work. Now, the Akashic records are guarded by a frequency of self-love. Our access is directly correlated to how much we're willing to love ourselves, because that's what ensures that we don't weaponize the intelligence.
Hmm.
Okay. So if I can love myself so much, Mike, that I see the God energy in me, that means that I'm going to see it in you and everything around me, and everything becomes me, and I don't want to harm anything. Right.
Looks like we're down to the last 10 minutes already. Wow, time flies. Um, so I just wanted to ask one more question. The Akashic Records, of course, is a Tibetan term and concept, but it was popularized by Helena Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, Edward Cayce, and others after. Are there different schools of thought and like paths that have diverged from, sects, so to speak, that and what's can you tell some of the differences or are
Yeah.
there
So
significant differences or are they
yes.
basically the same theme?
The theme is really the same, but I'll share with you like some of the differences. So, Akash is a Sanskrit word that means ether. Ether is primordial energy. Where did you say the word Akashic records? Hindu, I think, is where
I read
that
it was a Tibetan
a
concept,
Tibetan terminology.
but
Yeah. But and there are lots of different extrapolations. Like I shared, I grew up immersed in the Southern Baptist Church reading the Bible, and in the Bible, it's known as the Book of Life. So there are a lot of different names or constructs, like mental constructs that people can think about in terms of the Akash. Joe Dispenza calls it superconscious intelligence, right? So Helena Blavatsky, you say her last name, Mark, not me. You say it. No,
I believe
Helena
it's
B.
Blavatsky.
Blavatsky, there we go.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure how what her method or formula was for tapping in. She was one of the original ones that could tap in and get amazing information. Of course, we know Edgar Cayce too, known as the sleeping prophet. So he would go into a state of trance and get information for his clients. I don't go into a state of trance. I can. I've gone into a state. I haven't gone into a state of trance channeling where I don't remember. I have gone into a state of trance channeling where it feels like Emily's sitting over here and the guides are speaking through me. And sometimes my cadence changes or something shifts and changes. I'm sure people have seen Bashar, for example, channel. Uh, and he doesn't necessarily say he's channeling the Akash. Although I would say, I mean, that's the pervasive realm of intelligence where this higher intelligence comes in. Um, and what I've noticed is that as more and more of us get more familiar with this concept, we don't need those such alternative ways of experiencing it where, I go into channel chanting or like what people do, right? It's becoming more normalized. And not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. I have also had light language come through me that sounds like Chinese barking. And I feel embarrassed. I'm like, what just happened there? right? But what I'm noticing is that as this is becoming more normalized, so is the information as it comes through. And a lot of people will say they'll get on a call with me for a reading, and it feels like having a great conversation with a friend. When's the reading? Oh, and then they're like, oh no, the reading started, right? So that's how I've noticed the shift is that it's just becoming more normal. We're getting it.
Nice. So what how do you connect with people, and how do we get beyond the Akashic Records being like a report card of our whatever, our entire existence, into actually trans using it to transcend all the chaos and craziness that planet Earth is undergoing at the moment?
Well, to transcend the craziness that planet Earth is undergoing, we've got to transcend our own craziness, right? Which are really getting like clear about the areas of our life where we're stuck, where we're not in our divine potential. All right. So if your finances are not in a state of flow and you're not holding a frequency of abundance, you got to look at that, right? If you're calling in relationships that are causing you to be in conflict and draining your energy, you got to look at that. We're all doing things that are causing us to show up and to create this. And that's what the Akashic records are for. And that's how I use them with people is to get radical breakthroughs in areas of their life where they're stuck. So for me personally, I definitely had vows of poverty from past lifetimes of doing this work and renouncing any kind of material resource and possession. I had to clear that in this lifetime because y'all know living, going from day to day, existing on handouts from other people is not a way that creates stress-free mind open, let me tap into the divine. It creates survival mode, right? So I had to clear that in this lifetime. And the records showed me where I created it, helped me to clear it. And in 8 months, Mike, I quintupled my income. I went from making 2 grand a month to I think $175,000 in contracts by the end of that year. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, radical breakthrough for people. I had my client Cindy who created an autoimmune disease in her own life because she shut down her skills of being connected to the light. And you know how it manifested? She couldn't go out in the sun. So for 30 years before she recognized that she had done this to herself in her younger years, she took on this soul contract where the light feels too uncomfortable for me to shine my light and be who I am. I'm going to close it off. And it manifested physically in her body to where she couldn't go outside in the sun for 30 years without being under piles of clothing or protection. And by using her Akashic records and understanding and healing this, but in 3 months, she was going out to festivals in shorts and sandals, like crazy kind of results for people. So this is what we want to use the Akashic records for is to understand where we're stuck right now and how we get out so we can live in that highest potential because that's what heaven on earth is when you feel safe and creative and connected and cared for and on purpose. And the records help us get us there really quickly.
Nice. We have about 3 minutes left. Can you tell everybody how to get in touch with you, how to find you, and exactly what you do and how you created the Academy?
Yes, so come over to the website, theakashicacademy.com. The way that I work with people is training you in the Akashic Records. So that can look like teaching you how to read your own Akashic Records or working with you in the Akashic Records on a specific issue that you might have. So people who are looking for radical acceleration, this is your mechanism. And for people who want to stay connected, I do a weekly show where I do live readings, and you'll get notices of those live readings if you get on our email list. So here's the best way to get on my email list is to go to theakashicacademy.com. And right there, when you come on the website, Mike, I've got a free gift for everybody, which is how to turn on your intuition. Intuition is your ability to know something instantly. It's how we get communication from our guides, our angels, the Akashic records, our loved ones. We've got to train our intuitive or our psychic senses. And this intelligence has been lost on the planet. It's quite easy. So if you click on That download now button, you're going to get access to a training that will teach you how to have razor sharp intuition in just 15 seconds a day. So everybody can continue training their own Jedi skills after today.
And that was actually a question I forgot to ask was, is our intuition actually reading the Akashic records, tapping into it without knowing such?
Yeah, a lot of times that it is. We stumble into the records. Like anytime we're in that place of surrender, of show me and just tell me what I need to know, right? We can get to that place of being in the records. Now, the method that I teach people is how to do that on demand. So we don't have to go through all of the other challenges that wear us down and we get to that place of surrender, right? I teach people how to move into that place of surrender and neutrality, holding that frequency in their body and mind so they can get very instant, easy access.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Emily Harrison, for
Thank you too,
enlightening me
Mike.
on the Akashic records, and taking it past the basic terminology that I knew, but all this other stuff, not really so much. Um, I hope you join me again in the future, possibly.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. I had a great time here, and I hope to see some more people after this program hopping into my sacred classroom and sharpening up their Jedi skills too.
I hope
Good
so
stuff.
too. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.